How did a $500 commercial drone flown by a handful of operators and backed by 12 days of intelligence work turn a fortified Russian logistics hub and roughly $500 million in material into a non-factor in less than 2 minutes? This is the verified, step-by-step reconstruction of the Malipole depot strike. The intelligence, the tradecraft, the vulnerabilities exploited, and the precise sequence that produced a mission success measured in both kinetic effect and operational consequences. At 4 a.m. local time on a designated morning of late September, a coordinated Ukrainian operation began against the Malipole depot, a facility identified by multiple sources as a primary logistical node for Russia's southern front. For months, Ukrainian intelligence had monitored the site, and by the time of the strike had compiled a clear operational assessment. The depot stored up to 2 million pounds of ammunition and war material, representing roughly 50% of the small arms, artillery shells, and rockets routed through the Zaporizhia-Crimea corridor. The quantity and composition of the stockpile, combined with observed troop and vehicle flows, led analysts to conclude the depot was being staged for a major offensive intended to change the battlefield balance in the region. That assessment framed the operational objective: neutralize the stockpile, deny its use in the imminent offensive, and impose a time-critical disruption to Russian operational plans, all while minimizing Ukrainian exposure. The planning cycle that produced the strike was not a hasty improvisation. It was the product of a 12-day intelligence and operational planning effort led by Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence. The planning included layered reconnaissance, electronic order of battle mapping, human intelligence collection, deception measures, redundancy in command and control, and a clearly defined attacker sequence intended to defeat both kinetic and electronic defenses. From the outset, the intelligence picture combined multiple collection streams. Commercial high-resolution satellite imagery from Maxar provided overhead structural analysis and staging patterns inside the depot compound. That imagery established the layout of warehouses, vehicle access points, and a pattern of parked transport that allowed analysts to identify the most likely ignition points for a catastrophic and sympathetic detonation if a vehicle-borne charge were successfully detonated against stored ordnance. In parallel, a LEA-100 unmanned aerial platform operated at approximately 6,500 feet, about 1.23 miles, to conduct signals intelligence collection. That aerial asset collected radio frequency and radar emissions, mapping the depot's electromagnetic signature and providing a picture of deployed air defense and electronic warfare platforms. Those SIGINT returns identified multiple emitters consistent with a layered defensive posture: a Panzer S-1, SA-22 Greyhound, surface-to-air battery for medium-range engagement, rapid-fire U-23-2 anti-aircraft systems for short-range, close-in defense, and a Borsiglek 2 electronic warfare system employed to detect and jam small, unmanned aerial systems and disrupt command links. And ground-level human intelligence, local partisan networks operating within a couple of miles of the depot, provided the critical tactical confirmations. HUMINT reported vehicle movement patterns, personnel rotations, and, most importantly, the presence and quantity of stored ammunition. That human reporting corroborated imagery and SIGINT, yielding a consolidated estimate: about 2 million pounds of ammunition stored and staged for redistribution to frontline units. The convergence of these separate collection streams reduced key uncertainties and allowed planners to model plausible cascading effects in the event of a successful ignition of stored stocks. Russian operational security and the defensive posture at Malipole reflected confidence in the site's invulnerability. The combination of kinetic air defenses and an electronic warfare envelope was intended to make the depot effectively untouchable by small UAS threats. The Borsiglek 2 system in particular was employed to detect and jam command and control links commonly used by commercial and tactical drones. Those systems complicate remote piloting by denying RF telemetry and control. They are effective against standard radio links and many commercially available autopilot configurations. Ukrainian planners evaluated the full environment and selected a low-cost, high-impact delivery option. A commercially available FPV platform reported in operational notes as a hybrid 3D Tekriboth model equipped with a shaped 10-pound warhead. The platform's purchase cost is listed at approximately $500. The selection criteria were explicit: small size and low radar thermal signature for low altitude penetration, the ability to accept a fiber optic tether to defeat RF jamming, and a control architecture that allowed for both AI-assisted stabilization and direct human piloting when required. Because the depot's defenses were robust, the Ukrainian plan incorporated deliberate deception and layered decoys. Over the 12-day planning window, Ukrainian teams prepared fabricated radio transmissions that would be observable by Russian SIGINT collection and that mimicked preparations for a major ground assault roughly 100 miles west of Malipole near Kiran. Those falsified transmissions were broadcast on frequencies known to be monitored by Moscow's intelligence to induce a tactical redistribution of forces. The objective of the deception was explicit: draw elite units and attention away from the depot and create a window in which a narrowly tailored strike could succeed. As the operation commenced, the deception produced the expected effect. Russian command elements reacted to the fabricated traffic by repositioning elite units into what they believed would be rear area reinforcement and support. Among those repositioned were a 6-man naval infantry contingent and elements identified as the specialized Akhmat Vosto UAV squad. Intelligence indicates those units moved into the Malipole area because it was considered a secure rear position at the time. Reconnaissance efforts encountered friction. An initial attempt to use Russian CCTV feeds to monitor a specific target truck failed due to cyber defenses protecting the local network. That failure triggered a planned contingency. Partisans operating approximately 2 miles from the depot relayed real-time coordinates through a Starlink uplink. To ensure a command and control link that could not be jammed, the Reboth drone was launched with a fiber optic tether spool, designed to unspool as it flew. This tether provided a physical, unjammable downlink for high bandwidth video and control. The launch sequence and approach were executed under adverse conditions. Approximately 30 seconds into the final approach, mission logs record a persistent 20-knot crosswind, roughly 23 miles per hour, that required continuous stabilization corrections. The Reboth's onboard AI guidance performed thousands of micro-adjustments per second to maintain attitude and heading. A human pilot provided corrective inputs to compensate for lateral, drift, and kite forces on the tether. The operation thus depended on a hybrid control model: automated low-level stabilization with human supervisory control for final targeting inputs. To draw kinetic defenses away from the actual attack axis, Ukrainian forces launched 5 decoy drones. Economical systems each reported at about $200 that simulated the signatures of a larger swarm. Those decoys broadcast electronic signatures engineered to resemble multiple threat vectors. The Russian Panzer battery reacted predictably by engaging the decoys, expending approximately 57 E-6 family interceptors in a defensive engagement. Based on unit cost estimates, Russia expended roughly $360,000 in interceptors during that engagement, an expenditure that, while significant, still represented an acceptable trade for Moscow if it believed the larger threat had been neutralized. While the Panzer units and supporting air defenses engaged the decoys several miles away, the Reboth drone approached at low altitude, approximately 130 feet above ground, to minimize optical and radar exposure. Because the aircraft used a fiber optic tether, the Borsiglek 2 system's jamming capability was rendered ineffective against the principal control link. At one point, the operator transitioned the drone to a dark mode, severing its RF telemetry uplink and relying exclusively on the fiber optic feed for situational awareness and handoff control. This redundancy was crucial in an environment where active RF suppression was in play. Notwithstanding these mitigations, the operation experienced further complications. A Russian FPV patrol drone detected a thermal signature approximately 2 miles from the target area, prompting an increase in jamming activity from the Borsiglek 2. Later, the tether itself became compromised. It snagged on a power pole, severely limiting the drone's maneuverability and increasing the risk of mission abort. Within seconds, the situation deteriorated further when a grad rocket fired by a Russian crew, either in panic or as part of an attempted suppression, exploded nearby, creating a shockwave that further destabilized the tethered system. The mission's execution hinged on immediate and precise operator responses. The Reboth's pilot used the snagged tether pivot to reposition the platform behind a warehouse, thereby breaking line of sight from hostile assets and avoiding a full cable failure. Simultaneously, a Starlink command sourced to the partisan team instructed illumination of a secondary ground decoy, using a laser designator. That action successfully diverted the Russian FPV patrol drone away from the main axis and reopened a narrow window for the final run. At this point, the operator maintained a hard visual lock through the Reeboth's 10,080-pixel fiber optic video feed. The target was a truck arriving at the depot, a vehicle that intelligence had identified as carrying the 6 naval infantrymen and Akhmat Vosto personnel. With the depot's kinetic defenses engaged against the decoys and with localized aerial assets distracted by the laser-lit decoy, conditions aligned for the strike. The final approach sequence was executed with microsecond timing. The pilot accelerated the Reeboth to approximately 37 miles per hour, using structural cover, specifically a ruined building, as a masking agent to minimize detection during the terminal run. The drone impacted the truck's engine block. Its 10-pound shaped charge ruptured the fuel tank and initiated a secondary detonation sequence within the vehicle. That ignition propagated into the primary hazard, the 2 million pounds of stored ammunition inside the adjacent depot. What followed was a catastrophic sympathetic detonation. Secondary explosions and incendiary effects from stored rockets and munitions produced a rapid release of thermal and kinetic energy. After-action reports indicate a sustained series of secondary explosions, Grad rockets continuing to detonate for approximately 3 minutes after the initiating event, causing widespread destruction across the facility. Exact physical parameters, overpressure readings, peak temperatures, crater dimensions, remain unconfirmed in open reporting. However, the observable effects and imagery available to planners confirmed complete destruction of the depot and loss of the stockpile. The strategic and operational consequences of that single event were immediate and measurable. The depot's destruction severed a critical logistics corridor between Crimea and Zaporizhia, forcing Russian commanders to revise resupply routes and timelines. Analysts estimate the depot supported the sustainment of approximately 10,000 frontline troops, meaning the loss of about 3 weeks' worth of ammunition and munitions created a near-term constraint on offensive options in the theater. Command assessments indicate Russian operational plans, including the timing and composition of the planned offensive, were materially affected. From a cost-effectiveness standpoint, the strike produced an extraordinary return on investment. A platform purchased for roughly $500 delivered an effect that removed an asset with an estimated replacement value in the order of $500 million, yielding approximately a 1 million to 1 economic ratio, based solely on material haul value. Beyond the financial calculation, the operation delivered a tactical and psychological advantage to Ukrainian forces, a high-value, asymmetric blow that demonstrated Russian logistical vulnerabilities despite layered defenses. There are several technical and doctrinal lessons to extract from this operation. First, it demonstrates that layered defenses oriented primarily toward kinetic interception can be defeated by introducing a non-RF control link, here a fiber optic tether, and by combining deception with physical redundancy. Second, the strike emphasizes the operational value of converged intelligence, commercial satellite imagery, UAV SIGINT, and reliable human reporting fused to reduce uncertainty and enable precise targeting. Third, the action underscores the utility of low-cost decoys and deliberate expenditure of an adversary's high-value interceptors to create gaps in coverage. In this case, $200 worth decoys drew roughly $360,000 worth of interceptors. Operational tradecraft also played a decisive role. The planners anticipated multiple failure modes: cyber-protected CCTV denial, jamming escalation, tether snagging, and spontaneous enemy counterfire, and incorporated contingency measures for each. Alternatives included reliance on Starlink for real-time coordinate updates, the ability to switch to dark mode fiber control, and a prepared ground decoy to draw detection assets away. Those contingencies were critical. Without them, a single failure, such as the CCTV denial or the tether snag, could have aborted the mission. From a doctrinal view, the Malipole strike illustrates a shift in the battlefield calculus. Low-cost, commercially available systems integrated with high-quality intelligence and networked command and control can produce disproportionate effects on conventional military infrastructure. It is a case study in how asymmetric tactics, when executed with rigorous planning and redundancy, can penetrate assumedly secure rear areas. For military analysts, the operation warrants attention across several domains: logistics security for high-value stockpiles, the employment of electronic warfare to counter both RF and non-RF links, the resilience of air defense decision loops when confronted with multi-axis deception, and the economic calculus of interceptor expenditure versus perceived threat. For operational planners on both sides of the conflict, the strike is a reminder that technical superiority in selected systems does not automatically translate to invulnerability, particularly when human intelligence and creative tactics are applied against predictable defensive postures. In sum, the Malipole depot strike was not a lucky shot. It was a deliberately engineered effect produced by 12 days of coordinated intelligence work, redundancy-based tradecraft, a calculated deception campaign, and the tactical employment of a commercially available drone adapted to operate under severe electronic attack. The result, in roughly 94 seconds of terminal action, 2 million pounds of ammunition were destroyed, 6 elite personnel were killed, a logistics backbone intended to support thousands of troops was severed, and an anticipated Russian offensive was disrupted just days before an international peace summit, providing a concrete example of how integrated, low-cost solutions can impose strategic consequences on a conventionally superior adversary.